Really want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules today to attend our webinar. Today's webinar topic is the essentials to success at bridal shows. My name is Kevin Casey, and I'm a product and workflow consultant here at collagesWebinar and am the host of today's webinar. And we actually have a very special guest today. I'm sure most of you, I am recognizing a lot of names here, have seen Pete's webinars before, but I am joined by Pete Wright of PW Photography, located in Richmond, Virginia. And I just want to take a second to thank Pete for joining us today. How are you, Pete?
I am fantastic.
All right, awesome. We are very, very happy to have you on board today, especially with today's topic, which is very, very crucial for every photographer. And before we get into the essentials, or before we get into the webinar, I just want to go over a few essentials of using the webinar software. You will all see a window that looks very similar to this window here. And if you need to minimize or maximize this window at any time, all you need to do is click on the orange arrow found here to minimize and the orange arrow here to maximize it. Throughout the webinar, I know there are probably going to be a lot of questions, so I do ask you use the chat field found down below here where it says questions. And as you have your questions, please feel free to type them in here and I will be answering them as we go. I am going to save most of the questions to the end so that Pete can answer, but we're going to try not to interrupt him while he is going through. But other than that, without further ado, I am going to pass things on to Pete.
Thanks, Kevin. Glad to see everybody again, even though I can't see you, but I'm glad everybody joined us today. I'm going to share a ton of information with you guys, just gathered from years and years of doing bridal shows. We actually started doing bridal shows, I want to say either 2004 or 2005, and we do 2 big shows a year here in Richmond, Virginia. Our bridal shows typically have about 300 or so vendors and can have as many as 85 or 90 photographers and as few as 15. I like the ones that have 15, but you know, we deal with whatever we have in front of us because we can't really control the number of vendors that are there. A lot of times we've done shows in the past that have said we limit the number of photographers or the number of any type of individual vendor to 10% of the total show. It's always nice, and then we've done the shows, like I said, we had one recently that had 85 photographers at it, and afterwards, and it's a show that notoriously has a lot of photographers, and then the photographers always come up to me and complain, oh my God, there's 85 photographers here, there's just so many people, it's just, you know, it's too many, it's not fair that they have that many, they need to figure out a way to restrict it. You know, they spend so much time stressing out over that and really sweating the number of photographers that are there that they're really, to me, not focusing on the show itself and the things they need to do to be successful. And I always try to remind everybody, you know, at the end of the day, regardless of the number of photographers there are at the show, I mean, for example, I know in Houston, Texas, if any of you are from Houston, raise your hand. Just kidding. If you're in Houston, Houston has the largest bridal show in the country. And I want to say that they have over 200 photographers at their bridal shows. So it's a huge, huge show. And what I tell photographers when they say they have a lot of other photographers at the show is, you know, at the end of the day, you're not competing with 85 or 200 or however many photographers are there. You're competing only with the photographers that are in your market or in your budget. If a bride comes through and her budget's $500 and your prices start out at $3,000, that's not your bride. So you're not competing with the photographers that bride is looking for. You're only competing with the photographers that are in similar budgets and styles to you. And you really have to think of it that way. Now, it does get a little bit confusing to a bride because brides aren't thinking about the fact, well, I'm only looking at photographers in this price range. Brides are thinking of, I need a photographer. And at the end of the day, when they go home, even if they loved you in the 5 minutes they spent talking to you at the bridal show, when they go home, they have to differentiate you from the other 85 or 90 or 100, however many photographers that are there. And that's really kind of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about ways that's going to make you stand out, ways to make brides remember you, ways to look really, really successful, and ways to make bridal shows pay off for you at the end of the day. That's really your big goal. So let's get started. we're going to start off by talking about getting ready for the big day. And this is essential. First thing you really need to do is find out from the bridal show the size booths that are available. And if you're working within a budget, then I'm always going to say get the biggest thing that you can afford. And once you do that, once you know the size of the space you're going to have, don't wait until the show to set your booth up. We've always done this. Once we had the size that we knew we were going to start with, even when we started out, we did a 10 by 10, which was one of the smaller size booths. We would literally take tape and tape off the booth space in our living room at the time. Now in our studio, we'll tape off in our camera room, we'll tape off the dimensions of the booth, and then we actually set up the booth as we've mocked it. Always do a mock-up of your booth, because you really want to step back and see it, see what it's going to look like, see how it's going to fit. We've been in scenarios in the past where if we hadn't set it up in advance and just taken the stuff with us, we would have had more stuff than what would have fit in the space. And when we did the mock-up, we realized, okay, our plan was to do this, this, and this, and use this table and this chair, but when you put them beside each other and put everything there, it's actually way too big for the booth, and it covers way too much floor space that's not going to fit. On the exact opposite, you could end up having what you think is enough stuff, and then you get there and you set it up, and you have a very empty feeling booth. And it's really kind of nice to have, days in advance to set it up in your living room or your camera room or whatever you have, whatever your scenario is, and then step back and look at it as a bride would and say, okay, if I was a bride walking by, what would I notice? What things about this would bother me? So doing that just really gives you an opportunity to look at it, make adjustments, make tweaks, so that when you go in and set up for the show, you've already set it up once, so you know exactly how things go together. You've already put it together so you know any issues that you're going to run into, any problems. You know, okay, my electricity is going to have this issue, so I need to make sure I have a cord. I had problems getting the DVD player to work if you're running a TV show or something like that. Those little problems that you're going to run into on the bridal show day, it's much better to run into them a week in advance knowing your mock-up, or days in advance knowing your mock-up, so that you have time to work those kinks out. The worst feeling in the world is to get to a bridal show and be setting up, and then 10 minutes before they announce they're going to be opening the doors, you're still trying to get things set up because you ran into a few issues that you didn't know were going to happen. That's just so important. I can't stress how important that is. Put your best foot forward. Just to me, having current samples is so important. If you have albums from weddings that you did 5 or 6 years ago, if they're really, really great weddings, fine. Keep them there, show them. But to me, it's really impressive to brides when they're looking at weddings that are from the current calendar year. And, if you guys were to call Collages and talk to their ordering services there, Kevin or Kelly or anybody that's there, and ask them about us, they tell you, yeah, Pete usually places an order for 2 to 4 new albums about 2 weeks before every single bridal show. We call them up and we're saying, okay, I'm getting ready to send you a whole cluster of albums. Can you guys pick them out for us quick? Unfortunately, we know if I send an album through to them, for the most part, if I send it in on Monday, Wednesday, I'm going to have an album back. I think they have some of the really, really custom ones that have like glass covers and metal covers and things like that take 4 or 5 days or something like that. But we get the albums from them so quickly. It's always predictable in terms of the way they're going to look and display at the show. So we always try to stay on top of it. And I think there's a discount for samples, like 30% off or something like that. You'd have to ask them, but that's always really nice too. So we always go through and custom design albums specifically for our bridal shows of some of our most recent weddings. And we always try to show the nicest venues as well that we photographed in. To me, if you want to get nice venues for the weddings that you're trying to book, then you have to show nice venues. You have to show your best stuff. And remember, you don't have to show actual client albums. You need to show albums that are going to show your style of work. So when we do albums for bridal shows, we don't include formal or group photos, because to me, while yes, you take those at every single wedding, and yes, your clients expect that you're going to take them, they know that you're going to take them. So by including a spread or 2 spreads of your album showing formal photos, you've essentially just taken a spread or 2 spreads of potential space where you could actually show other more interesting, better work that really portrays your style. And we have people that say, well, do you not take formals? Occasionally we'll have people that ask us, say, yes, we do take them, but not all of our clients decide that they want to put those in their album because they know what everybody looks like. They see them throughout the wedding. They'd much rather see them this way, and they'll show the formals in an 8x10 frame or somewhere around their house that stays out all the time versus in their album. To us, though, we never put formals in our albums just for that reason. I'd much rather have the space to show our best work off. We always make sure we have current samples in terms of gallery wraps, the prints that we show, the things that we're putting out there. We want our best, most current stuff out. We like to surprise people because a lot of times brides are checking out your work on the websites before they go to the show. They're doing their homework and they say, okay, I know this person's going to be at the show, so I want to go see them. Let me look at their website, get a little idea of what's happening. So when they get to the show, they've already kind of been excited about your work because they saw you on the website. So they're planning on seeing you. So it is a nice surprise for them to come by your booth. And not only are they seeing some of the stuff that was on your website that excited them, but they're also now seeing great new stuff that's, oh my, man, I really had no idea this is even better than what I expected. It's like a nice little surprise for them. And it essentially, gives them a tap on the shoulder and says, this is why you were thinking about us. And it's a visual confirmation of them of making the right decision for considering you for a photographer. So, really keeping current samples out there is so important. I always say go big or go home. To me, when you're doing a bridal show, if you're hanging 11x14s and 8x10s and small prints on the wall, and we did a show, we always try to set up the day before on bridal shows so that we're not stressing on the day of. And the nice thing is that gives me time on the day of, once we come in, just to make sure that the final touches are done, to walk around and look at other booths, visit friends, say hello, see what's going on, not necessarily scout the competition, but to go into the show in a more relaxed mode versus stressed out. So when I walk around, I actually walked around a few years ago, and there was a booth there that was a pretty well-known photographer that had been around for a long time, and they took their wall of their booth and covered it with almost 200 photos, and nothing was larger than an 8x10. And it was so busy and so overwhelming with photos that you literally couldn't land on one and you couldn't take it in. So they may have had some great photos out there, but it was so cluttered visually that you just kept on going. And we saw brides just walking right on by because it was almost disturbing to the eye. If you watch people, and we've actually timed it, if you watch people walk by your booth, you literally have about 1 second of time of them glancing over to your booth as they go on by to have something that's visually going to grab their attention. So for us, and you'll see it in a few minutes, we're going to show some photos of our booth, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. For us, we have never had anything smaller than a 16x20 in our booth. In fact, typically we have 30x50s and massive, large gallery wraps. To me, if you have 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 really amazing photos blown up really large that can be seen, from just about anywhere, then that's going to grab people's attention and say, ooh, that's a really great photo. Because at the end of the day, your biggest thing is getting them in there to look at your albums and talk to you. And if you have, 1 or 2 great photos that jump out, if you have 8 photos and one just really jumps out to us, ooh, I love that photo. Even if they didn't like the other 7, they're going to come over to get a closer look at that one photo. And while they're there, it gives you an opportunity to greet them and talk to them, show them albums and show them some of your other work that really will basically bring approach to you for your opportunity to speak with them. So definitely avoid having small images that just aren't seen, aren't real visible, and gives you an opportunity to speak with those clients when they stop by and they're walking through. The right tool for the job, to us, when you're setting up and getting ready for the show, it's so important to be ready. And we made this mistake the first time. We just had no idea how important this was going to be. We went to the show, and we were literally carrying hands full of albums and getting there to set up, and we realized that a lot of the tools and things we needed for last-minute adjustments to the booth, we just didn't have. So we were spending all this early time scurrying around the show saying, hey, can I borrow a stapler? Can I borrow some tape? Do you have a ladder? Do you have anything? And to us at the bridal shows now, we literally have a checklist of all the things that we need to take with us to the bridal show. We made an investment in buying probably a half a dozen or more of the large plastic tubs. I think they're like 55-gallon Samsonite tubs or something like that. They're like $4 or $5 at Walmart. They come with a lid and everything. So we take those, we put all of our albums in that. The nice thing is now I just pick up one tub to carry in. The albums are protected, so if one slips out of my hands, if I was carrying them loose, it falls and the corner's busted up and the album's all messed up. Now they're in the tub. If I drop the tub, they're fine. The tub just got dropped. I pick it back up. And now I can carry that tub a heck of a lot easier than I can carry loose albums. Those tubs are amazing. We put everything in these plastic tubs. So now you see us roll in with these 6 tubs and we just start pulling stuff out. Those are just key, and I always recommend making sure you have something like that. We also take a dolly with us. Dollies are a premium at bridal shows because everybody at the show is basically fighting for the 1 or 2 that the show has. So if you have your own dolly, we actually invested probably about 6 years ago in a thing called Total Trolley. And you guys have probably, if you stay up really, really late at night like us, you've probably seen an infomercial for it. I think it was like $70 on these infomercials, and I think there's a website or you can Google Total Trolley. But it's really neat. It works as a hand truck with 2 wheels, or it's got 4 wheels on it and with a handle, and it folds out as a trolley. So I can literally load up all 6 tubs of stuff that we take on the trolley and just roll right in with it. Or it folds out into a step ladder, a 3-step step ladder. So it serves 3 purposes for us. And when it's in that 4-wheel trolley mode, when we're taking furniture and stuff in, I can literally put a couch on this and roll the couch in without having to lift it. So it really serves a great purpose, being able to do so many different things. But having anything with wheels that you can load up and carry stuff in is hugely important. The more of that kind of stuff you can have, the better you're going to be. And then one of your tubs should definitely have lots of tools, more tools than what you think you're going to need. A hammer, a couple of different screwdrivers, a tape gun, staple gun. If you have carpet, double-sided tape so it doesn't slide around. Just kind of the tools of the trade, things that might just come up. If you don't use them, great, but you'd rather have them and not use them than need them and not have them. That's a mantra that you should live by. So having the right tool for the job is hugely important. Make sure you have all these things ready to go on the day of the wedding show. Location, location, location. And guys, I'm kind of cruising through because I have a lot of information to cover. So if you do have questions, I can go as long as we need at the end of this answering questions. So please answer questions if I touch on something that you want to hear more about. Location is really important. To us, when we do our show, we always get the largest booth available right at the front of the show because I want to be the first thing that brides see when they walk in the door. Now, that doesn't mean if that space is gone that you can't get another great space, but it's always a good idea to talk to the person that's running the bridal show. They're always going to be pretty honest with you and say, well, this is a good spot or this is a good spot. Based on the flow, I would think about this spot or this location. With us, when we this is the grid that we actually received for our most recent show, and this was the smaller show. We do a show in August and a show in January, so you can see this show has 380 or 390 vendors. I can't tell, but it's just got a ton of vendors there. And if you look at the very front of the show entrance, we're usually in either 136 or 144. We're in one of those 2 spots right at the front. And then the fashion show's at the back. Now, there's a few, to us, I would either want to be at the very front of the show or I'd want to be near the fashion show. The fashion show, when that happens, all the brides go and just flock to the fashion show. So if you're near that, it almost becomes standing room only, and you have brides standing around your booth that, they'll look at your stuff while they're there, which is really nice. So looking for spots that are high traffic areas, we try to avoid the far walls. If you look over to the far left of your screen, the little 100s, 102s, 103s, we try to avoid those because to us, kind of the heartbeat of the show is right in the center. Brides will start off, when they walk in the show, they almost always walk in and go straight to the left, and they go to that first aisle, which is the 100s, 102s, 103s. But once they've done that aisle, they don't go back over there, which is our experience. So we try to stay right there in the middle, right to the front, so that we're seeing the same brides kind of walk by over and over because they're trying to experience that heartbeat of the show. The other thing we always try to do is make sure that we have an end or corner booth. It usually costs just a little bit more at our shows to get an end or corner booth, but only like $50 more. The nice thing about that is when you have a corner booth, you can take that little end rail off, and even if let's say you got a 10 by 10 booth, well, if it's a 10 by 10 and you got a rail on both sides, then really you only have 10 feet of entry space. But if you get a corner booth and you take that side rail off, now you've got 20 feet of entry space. So you've almost got essentially what feels like a 10 by 20 booth because you've got twice as much space that brides can enter your booth and approach you to look at your samples, look at your albums, and talk to you. And that is so important. It's also nice because you don't have vendors on both sides of you, so you don't feel like you got lost. You're at the beginning or the end of an aisle, and it's the way that brides are entering the aisle. You're the first thing they see. So it's really, really important to me to try to get that corner booth. So let's look at some photos of our booth, and we're going to talk a little bit while we're doing this about things that are really important. I'm going to go through the history of some of what we've done. This is one of our early booths, and to us, one of the things that we always say is when you're setting up your booth, always try to come up with your own sign. If you look at the shows, they always have a sign that they provide for you that's usually like a 3 or 4 foot long piece of paper by 6 inches that's your name of your studios written in just plain Arial black type. And we see so many photographers that make the mistake of just leaving that up as their sign. And honestly, if you do that, to me it just doesn't look real professional. It doesn't look like you've been around for a long time. The more established businesses usually have their own sign with their logo, their colors, their signage. So in this one, and like I said, this is one of our early booths. You see we've actually replaced the sign that's there with one that we had made. Like I said, we used a minimalistic approach to the way that the booth looked in terms of lots of large prints and not a whole lot of clutter. This was key to us early on. We decided that we wanted to have a landmark, something that would stand out. And we said, let's put a couch in our booth, but let's not just put a regular couch. Let's put one that just stands out. So we put a red couch right at the front of our booth. So when brides walked in, they saw this bright red couch. It was the first thing they saw with lights on each side. That couch came from IKEA. It was $149. I think we paid $20 or $30 more for the red cover. And we still, to this day, use that couch, but we changed the colors of the covers and other stuff on it. I think now we have 2 in our booth. We'll see at the end. The 2 tan tables on either side, they're actually, and pretty much everything in this particular booth came from IKEA. Those 2 tan tables, the really tall tables that have albums on them, come from IKEA, are actually made to roll over your bed. So when you're sitting in bed, you roll those back and you work on your laptop or take notes or draw or read books, whatever. So they have wheels on them, which is really nice. We can actually load those down with albums and material and roll those tables right to the booth and then unload them. So remember I was saying anything you can get with wheels is great. Well, those tables were perfect for it. Another key is, especially in this show, as you see, this show did not have carpet on the floor. This was a huge, huge, huge arena. It probably is the size of about 10 or 15 football fields, and it was just a concrete floor. So when you're a bride walking around a show that is not carpeted, any place that you can stop that's going to rest your feet because you've been walking on it for a long time, you're going to stand and spend a few extra seconds there. So when this booth was done, you could stand on the carpet while you were looking at albums, or you could sit down while you were looking at albums, which is really nice. And because we had that red couch, it became a landmark. We literally had brides at the show walking up to us saying, I was told by another friend of mine that I had to come see the photographer with the red couch. So it was a landmark. It was something easy for people to go looking for and find. the evolution, this is the next evolution, and we always try to add something, change something up. The next evolution, again, almost the exact same. We still have the red couch, but now we added a zebra ottoman at the front of our booth, something just to draw a little of attention, a little pizzazz. Anything that you have like that, if you're a photographer that is not real traditional and conventional, it's going to show, okay, I'm a little different. I do things a little different. We're gonna do some cool stuff at your wedding that's a little different. And this was one of the early shows where we realized that height is usually not a rule at bridal shows with high ceilings. You know, they usually say, okay, if you get a 10 by 20 booth, you can't go beyond 10 by 20 in terms of stepping into the aisles, but you can go as high as you want. If you want to go to the ceiling, you can go to the ceiling. So with this show, what we actually did, you can see it on each side of the booth, we took a 14-foot stand and we created a board that was painted black and had Velcro on it that we used a super clamp to hold from the very top all the way to the bottom. And then we took 16 by 20 and 16 by 24 prints, Velcroed them, and they're just mounted on gator foam, Velcroed them on the back, and we stuck them to the board. And now we had prints 14 feet in the air. So no matter where you were in the show, you could see something sticking up above everything else, and you could see it was photos. So it drew your attention and said, let me go see what that is. We've always, since this particular show, played by the rules of if we can go up high and make sure that we can be seen from anywhere in the show, it's going to pay off for us because it's going to bring visibility. You see at the bottom there also, we still have the TVs. The TVs, we have never purchased TVs. In fact, I don't even own an LCD TV in my home. We still have the old 27-inch tube TVs. I think we might have a 35-inch tube TV. We don't own an LCD TV. We rent these for every single show. For a while, we actually went to Rent-A-Center where you can rent TVs by the week, and I think it was a minimum of 2 weeks. So we would rent these for 2 weeks. I think it cost me maybe $120 or less to rent both TVs for a 2-week period. And the nice thing is this particular show was always right before the Super Bowl, so I had 2 really great LCD TVs for a Super Bowl party right afterwards, which always kind of paid off for me. My wife didn't really like it so much, but for me it was a bonus. I had a couple of 42-inch TVs there to use. So anything we could do to keep our expenses down but go big was great. And this was kind of early on when LCD TVs were relatively new. I think this show was maybe 2007. So I think we were the only ones, when we first did the couch, we were the only ones that had furnitures in our booth probably for 2 years. And then when we did the TVs, we were the only one with TVs for another couple of years. And it's funny, as you do things that are different, you'll start noticing that other vendors will start kind of doing the same type things. And it's, you know what, it just pushes you to find something new and different that you can do at the next show. We always try to raise the bar. We always try to do something different and try to make adjustments so that we stand out. So here's the next progression. And at this show, we actually got rid of the red cover on the couch, but we got a couple of red, cool, funky chairs that were, again, different stylistically. They stood out and gave brides something different to view us from. The essential look on the inside stayed very much the same. The gallery wraps that you see that are there, each of those, I think the smallest one is 30 by 50, so we had 4 really huge gallery wraps hanging up. The 2 chairs there, I think I did a search on IKEA for modern funky chair or something like that, and I literally got both of those chairs for $110, including shipping total, not $110 each, $110 total for both of them, and I could pick whatever color I wanted. So we actually have used those chairs for senior portrait sessions and all kinds of stuff. We still have them to this day. They're really, really cool and handy to have. So just being creative and looking for the things. We went to one TV for this show, and just again had a nice clean look. We had landmarks. Go to the booth with red chairs and the couch with the pillows on it. Then we decided to go really, really big. So we knew with this show that we were going to miss a couple of shows because my wife was pregnant with twins. So we knew, okay, we're probably not going to be able to attend the next show because it's literally within weeks of us giving birth, and we don't know if we're going to be able to do the show after that because we're going to have infant twins. So we said, all right, since we're definitely going to miss at least one show, let's go big. So we did this show, and this was kind of a neat thing. We had truss work, and it doesn't show as well in the photos as I'd like because we were using, I think, a cell phone to take photos of this. And always take a photo of your booth, even if it's with a cell phone. And I'll talk about the importance of that later. But the metal brace work here, there's lights that go up, and the lights that you see in the truss work changed colors every 30 seconds or so, and we got to choose what colors. So we chose basically red, orange, and yellow, I think, which were the colors of the pillows and everything that was there. This booth was 12 feet tall, so no matter where you were, the rest of the show is 8 feet tall. No matter where you were in the show, we were 4 feet taller than anything else in the show. And you can see just to the left, you can see the booth beside us. You can see just how much taller we were than that one. The really neat thing about this is we paid nothing for this, for the rental of this. If you talk to the rental companies that are at the show with you, that rent truss work or dance floors or tents and things like that, a lot of times they're going to be more than happy to loan you whatever you need for your booth, as long as you tell them where it came from when brides come through and say, hey, I like this. Where did it come from? Oh, well, if you go to this booth at the very back, that's who has it. So the really cool thing about this one is we paid nothing for the rental of this. They set it up. All we had to do was show up, put our couch down, put our albums down, hang our prints, and we were done. And we had a very, very different feeling booth, and it was really cool. So, and now in this year, they actually carpeted the aisles, which was really nice. So now, you know, if you're a bride, you walk in, and this is the first thing you see. And notice we did not use their black and white striped or colored backgrounds. In fact, I'm going to go back. If you notice on the booth right beside ours, they had black and white alternating panels. We always asked to have nothing but black. We wanted solid black all the way across. To me, whatever we do, and we did that every single year, you can see we always ask for the solid black versus the black and white alternating. So if the pipe and drape companies are renting this stuff for the show, so if you ask the show, hey, can we have solid colors across the back, they won't alternate it. After we asked them about having solid colors across the back for about 4 years in a row, they went to just a solid color. So now the entire show is either all white or all black. I can't remember. And they started doing that because we bugged them about it every single year. And then they saw, yeah, it does make sense just to have a nice, clean, solid color all the way through versus alternating panels. So when all of a sudden the entire show now had the same color for everybody, we said, okay, well then we're going to have our own color. So we went to red. So again, it's a landmark. It's something that stands out. We still had the carpet in our booth there, the areas that people could sit and stand, so it was nice and comfortable. So then we came back, and this is our most recent booth that we just did. We went to a foam display system, and again, this is a rental. We didn't pay for the. We didn't buy this. We didn't own it. It's 9 feet tall by 20 feet across, and there's a couple of different photos of it. So if you go back to each side, it's 2 feet deep. So each side actually has 2 feet of panel, and it's a felt-type material that you can Velcro anything to. So all those prints that are hanging on the wall with, our own sign, but all those prints are prints that had happened within the last year or so. They were relatively recent, and there were prints on the sides too. So as people were approaching our booth from the back, they could see photos as they walked up from the side, and it was really easy. I mean, we were able to go get 20 by 24s and 24 by 24 prints to hang in those spots. Each square there is 3 feet by 3 feet. So 20 by 24 fit perfectly in there because it gave us essentially a 6-inch surround on all the way around. And it was just a really, really nice presentation for the way the photos looked in there. So really easy display system. We rented this again. It has a bracket system in the back, and essentially gave us 2 feet of storage in the back. So all of our tubs and everything could store back in there. The tables this year for this particular show, we actually went to a local rental company and said, we'd like to have tables and some skirted tables, and they said, just tell us what you need. We didn't pay a dime for it. They even delivered it, and all we had to do was set it up. So the 2 round cocktail tables on the corners, and then the 2 tables in the back, as well as the gray skirting, we actually got for free just for the show, and then when we were done, they came and picked it all up. And again, it gave us a nice refined look. It gave us something different and easy because we didn't have to deliver it. Now you see there we actually have 2 of the couches. We went back and bought another one of the couches. And for this particular show, what we decided was we wanted the only color from the show, from our booth, to be from our photos. We wanted a very clean palette of grays, blacks, and whites. And then the color of our photos would then stand out more because that's the only thing of color there. We also had up lighting, so you can see the lighting all the way across the booth there. Anytime you can add lighting, elements of lighting in your booth, it's really nice. It's again something that draws extra attention. Again, we didn't pay for it. The rental companies loaned it to us, so it was just a nice extra touch. Here you see a little bit closer version. You can see the albums laid out on the couch. We actually made our own custom pillows for the couches, something rather than just a plain throw pillow. But just real slick, easy. We put some flowers in there. We approached a florist that was a local florist and said, hey, can you do a flower display for us? Absolutely, and put some flowers in there. The other thing we always say is, and I know it's kind of one of those, oh, everybody does that, but man, it's worth it. Everybody does it because it works. The mask box on the ottoman there is full of Hershey Kisses and Hershey Nuggets and chocolates and stuff like that. And it's not just out, and this is the one mistake people make with chocolate. They'll put a bowl of chocolate at the very front of their booth. So a bride doesn't have to walk in to get the chocolate. They can literally not even be standing in your booth, reach their hand in, grab chocolate, and keep on going. With us, we put chocolate visibly in our booth, but they have to walk into our booth past us in to get the chocolate. And they'll, most brides aren't going to be blatant about it and walk in and grab chocolate and walk back out. They'll walk in and flip through albums, and they may just walk back out and have no interest. But a lot of times, you're going to have that bride that say, I just walked in to get chocolate, but I really like what I'm seeing here, so let me check it out. So having chocolate is just a nice little touch. It's a nice little reward for people. I definitely recommend having some chocolate and some little goodies and munchies for people. The other thing, if you'll notice, I'm going to go back through, on every single one of our booths, we do not block the front entry. And that's one of the things I see so many photographers do. You're usually provided with, depending on the size of your booth, one 6-foot table, sometimes 2 6-foot tables and some chairs. And I see so many photographers set up and put the table at the very front of their booth, and then they sit behind the table. Well, the problem is when you get a show like this that has 2,000 brides walking through, if they're stuck standing in the aisle and traffic is moving, then they're going to move with the flow of traffic. But if you give them the ability to step in out of the aisle, they're going to spend more time in there. So we always say if you're going to use the table that comes with the show, at least move it to the back of your booth, open your space up, and invite people to come in and spend time. You want your booth to be inviting. You want to have open areas for them to walk in and out. You want to have the ability for them to feel like they're out of the line of traffic and they're not one of the cows that's herding through the show. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, bad, and the ugly. I've got some photos of booths from all over the country, and basically we're going to go through and look at some of the mistakes that people made and some of the good things that people did. So here's brides looking at some albums, and the problem with this one, they've got lots and lots of albums all cluttered onto the table. They also have photos and writing things. They just have so much here that brides are literally having to reach over each other to get to albums. We usually say when you're putting albums out on the tables, just keep them one deep so that brides don't have to reach across each other, and try to keep it as clean. Don't put too many albums out. It's okay to have extra albums at your booth, but have it so that you can pull it out to show to brides. Don't put them all out on the table and then have your table all stacked up. And we always make an effort to have favorite spreads that we really, really love of an album. And when brides leave, we'll flip back to that spread because we know that spread always gets attention. People like that. So, if you have an album, a table full of albums, then you have people that are walking by, and there's so many things there to look at that they can't settle in. Their eyes can't settle in on one thing, so they just keep on going. But if you have less albums and the ones you have are open to very specific pages that draw attention, then brides are going to more likely stop and look and not get frustrated with the fact that people are reaching across them. This was actually a pretty nice booth. It was very simple. They brought in extra lighting to light the photos. They did have some photos that were a little bit smaller, but at least they're up high and they're visibly seen. The albums are on pedestals that are easy to look at and enjoy. So this was actually a pretty good booth. This was one that we thought they did a really good job of not using the stuff that was there from the show and bringing in their own display. Brought their own sign, so good job on this show. And again, carpet. They brought their own carpet, so when you're in there, you're standing on something nice and soft. This one, you know, it's not great, but it's not ugly. This is actually a pretty decent show booth. They did do a good job of getting the print up nice and high off the floor, so they got some good height on that one there. The one that really, the thing that really kills me on this one is they went to the trouble of, you know, putting carpet down on the floor, getting some prints up high, less albums, but then if you look at the very back of the booth on the floor behind the easels, you see all these cords and cables everywhere. And it's like you've done all this trouble to make such a nice looking booth. At least tidy up those cords. You know, it's hide the cords under a piece of carpet or zip tie them, do something, put them under the table, but have those cords in a place that it's not real cluttered looking. Again, you want clean, efficient look. You want something that's not going to be disturbing to the eye, and that's just one of those things that it was almost an amazing booth, and that one little thing, again, didn't kill the booth, but it was kind of a little strike against it. This was a miss. This was an ugly. This is one of those things where it almost felt like they took everything they had ever seen or heard of that they thought was great in a booth and put it all together in one and didn't check to see if any of it was going to coordinate. Yeah, they brought in a rug, an area rug, and it's neat because it's an Oriental rug. But then they brought in these blue covers to cover the tables that they have there, which is a good idea. I'm glad you covered it. But the blue covers completely go against the colors of the booth. So you've got this burgundy and white wall that kind of matches the rug, but then you've got these giant blue cloths, and then you've got this gold streamer kind of draped across as well. So everything's kind of working against each other in terms of the way they look and feel. Good in terms of having less photos. It's not cluttered and everything, but just if you're going to do things, try to make sure that they coordinate. Make sure, I mean, as photographers, it's our job to make sure things look good. That's why when we're doing portrait sessions, we have clothing consultations. So we tell people, okay, don't wear paisley if your wife is wearing stripes. You know, avoid certain things, avoid certain colors. We try to tell people to wear colors that go together and make sure that they look good. So it's our job, basically, to make sure things look good. So if a bride goes to a booth and our booth doesn't coordinate, doesn't look good together, they probably aren't going to think that we're going to do a good job of telling them how they're going to look good together on their wedding day. This one, you know, they did such a good job of having huge portraits for people to see, but they used the tiny sign that came with the show and didn't put a big sign up or a sign that said who they were other than the little show sign. They're sitting down instead of standing up. We always say if there's chairs in your booth, your tail should never touch it. You should be standing up the whole time. If you need to sit down and take a break, hopefully you have somebody with you to help. If you're sitting down to take a break, go out of your booth and go sit in an area that's designated for taking a break, but you should be standing in your booth the whole time. If you're sitting down, then that tells people that you're just not interested in talking to them. It's just not a good sign for you. And they've got the table at the very front of their booth blocking everything else off. So now people can't get into your booth. So even if they wanted to talk to you, come in and talk to you, they can't. They got to stand behind the table, and you can see behind them there's a lot of people on the aisles there. So, you know, this is a busy show. People are trying to walk around, and they can't because they have to take a look at your show and they keep on going. You really want to open your booth up and get out of that chair and put a good sign up. Here's a big miss to us. And, you know, first of all, they've got this huge sign at the left-hand side that it's so big that it almost overwhelms the whole booth. You can't even visually get into the booth. It becomes kind of a problem in terms of it's it's taken away the impact of the photos that you have there. Secondly, they've got photos literally sitting on the floor, leaning against tables, to a point that they even have cardboard corners on them covering up the frames to protect the frames. If you have to put cardboard on your frames to protect your frames, then that should tell you probably shouldn't be doing that. You don't have to put every photo that you own, that you've ever taken, and that you love in your booth. Just put your favorite ones up. If you're having to put photos in at the expense of putting them on the floor, then you're hurting yourself in terms of the way it looks, because again, it gets cluttered, and people walk behind and saying, I would never put a really expensive, fancy print that I paid a lot of money for on the floor of my home. So why is the photographer doing it? And it's just, again, they've got really small sizes, and the frames don't coordinate. They've got gold, silver, and wood tone. Again, try to coordinate. If they had just gone simpler and put less photos up, they could have gone with all gold and would have looked great, because they have clearly enough gold frames or enough silver frames to have done one or the other and had a really, really nice display here. And then they got the Groucho Marx Bride, which is nice and entertaining as well. This is actually a hit. This is a good one. And even though it may not be the style of what any of us would do, depending on your style, it's a little bit more traditional style photography, but they embraced what they are. They didn't hide behind a different type of photography or a different display. They didn't put a real modern display with traditional photography in it, and they didn't have a really traditional display with modern photography in it. They have a very traditional style of photography, but they also have very traditional booths. So when you walk in here, there's not going to be a question of the type of photography this person provides, and that's perfect. When a bride walks in, they've got a handful of very large prints on display. They've got really clean layout of the albums on the tables, so it's easy to walk in. You're standing on comfortable carpet. You can flip through the albums. It's just a few out on the table, so you don't have to reach across each other, and it's just completely clear who this photographer is, and this photographer absolutely nailed it. The next one here, and this one, hopefully if you guys are looking, you're seeing what I'm seeing, but in this booth, there's not a sign anywhere with this photographer's name. They literally do not have any sign saying, this is who I am, this is what I do. So you can walk by and see a lot of good photos, but you don't even know if this person's a photographer. For all you know, they could be, the person that rented the items in the photos, or they could be a lab that prints photos for the brides. You don't know that they actually provide photography services because they don't have a sign. They did a decent job of getting a way of having nice size prints, up high so people could see it. But then they also have the table up front, and then they have 3 chairs. It looks like they went out and got extra chairs. They have 3 or 4 chairs in the booth there that he's not using, so he's doing a good job. He's at least standing up. But get rid of the chairs, move the table out of your booth, or at least to the back of your booth, so people can come in and talk to you and see your albums and get to know a little bit more about who you are. But, man, you got to have that sign. If you don't have a sign, that's probably the worst mistake you could have, is not telling people who you are and what you do. This was actually a pretty decent booth. They had the really, really nice big print over to the side there. They went to the trouble of having some really nice large prints and brought some furniture in, but they used the sign that the show came with. Again, if you're going to go to the trouble of putting together a display, then you got to have a sign. We actually, I think the first couple of times we did signs, we went to like the Signs R Us or a place like that. But then we realized, number one, it's a heck of a lot cheaper to pay to get a 24 by 36 or a large mounted photo print. And number two, it looks better. I mean, I'm a lot more flexible in terms of what I can put on that sign, because a lot of the sign places basically are limited to the font and the lettering that they can cut out on their computer and then adhere to a piece of board. Whereas with the photos, I can actually literally lay it out the way I want it to look, send it to my lab, and then I get a 24 by 36 mounted print of my logo on a sign that I can hang up and do any way I want. In fact, a lot of times we'll do that and actually put it in a 24 by 36 frame at our show. So we've essentially got a framed print, which is actually our logo. right in the middle of our show, which makes it look even more elegant. The other thing with this booth is it's really, really cluttered feeling. They've got big prints that you can't even see. Some of the big prints are actually blocked by the smaller prints that are on the table in front of them. That you've got the print of the bride and groom in this really beautiful archway here with it's a really nice print, and it's actually blocked and covered by the print in front of it, so you miss some of the impact of how nice that print is. This photographer does beautiful work. I mean, you can see everything they have there. It's just very nice, elegant work, and you just wish that they had pulled some of the smaller stuff off and had just a little bit less. But this was just on the verge of being a really, really nice booth, and just minor tweaks get them to having a fantastic one. This photographer took a very minimalistic approach. Beautiful work. If you look at what's around him, really, really neat stuff, had a neat perspective. A couple of different things. This photographer didn't really dress for the occasion. We always say you really want to look professional. You want to look nice at the show. And if you show up wearing jeans and a T-shirt at the bridal show, you know, a lot of times at the bridal show, mom and dad who are paying for the wedding actually come with the brides there, and they're the ones that are spending the money. And if they're spending $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on a show, they want to know that, you know, you're respected enough to at least dress the part. And I know it's kind of trendy now to wear cool jeans and cool shoes and stuff like that when we're speaking or when we're at trade shows or we're doing senior sessions and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a wedding we're talking about, that you're going to be photographing in a church or whatever. And, you know, if you want those big money weddings are usually black tie affairs. You can't wear that stuff to those weddings. And I usually say dress the way you're going to dress for a wedding. So if a bride says, well, what do you wear at the wedding? Exactly what you're looking at. Now, doesn't mean it has to be a tux, but it could be just a really nice suit or something that looks good. You just want to look professional. The other thing is he has no albums in his booth, and he has nothing to hand out. So there's no materials, no marketing materials, no albums. There's nothing there. It's just this big display. So if brides come in and they want to get information about this photographer services, there's nothing there for them to take with them. And if they want to see more than just the 7 or 8 photos that he has on display there, there's no albums or anything for them to look at. So you just want to make sure you have enough content that if you have a great display like this that brings them in and says, oh, look at my work, I've got really cool stuff here, let me show you some more. Because then they question, do you have any better work, or is this the best that you've got? Here's a pretty nice display. They opened up, so there's no tables blocking the front. They stay consistent with colors throughout. It's very elegant. They have nice images, nice and high, nice big signs so you know who they are as soon as you walk in, and just very well done. You know, not too many albums out. It's easy to walk through and look at the albums that are there, so you don't have to reach across people. This booth did a really good job. I think this was a 10 by 10 booth, and they didn't get a corner space, but they took advantage of it by putting tables on both sides and gave people the ability to walk in and see stuff on both sides. So good job on this one. This is one of our favorite ones because, again, they actually went to 2 really, really big images that had a lot of impact that really got people's attention. They went to a single table in the middle with albums all the way around so people could walk in and look at albums all the way around. And they've got great color and great texture and warm tones. You almost feel when you look at this like you're not actually standing in a bridal show. And a nice big sign. This is probably like the Kinko's banner sign. It would probably be my only strike against them is that it's that curled up, rolly sign. But at least they have a sign that's not the little teeny tiny sign that uses their logo. But I just hate seeing those Kinko's vinyl signs that curl and roll. They look cheap to me, and I think if you're going to have a nice sign in there, if you're going to spend that much money getting a show, spend the extra, you know, $50 to $60 by getting a nice mounted one that's going to really make your sign look that much nicer and elegant. I always say if you expect your clients to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on you, make it look like they should. So let's get back into the shows. Now, once you're at the show, once you're all set up and you've got your booth looking the way you want it to look, you want to look busy. So one of the things that's a tip for us that we tell you to do at every single bridal show is in your pocket, even if you don't have a single wedding, if this is your first bridal show, you don't have any weddings on the books, the only weddings that you're displaying are ones that maybe you did for friends or family just to get content, have a card in your pocket. And when a bride comes to you and says, hey, are you available on June 2nd? If you know for a fact that you're available on June 2nd because you don't have a single wedding on the book, you say, you know what, let me check. I know we've got some things going on in June. We've already got some bookings. Let me check to see if I have your date available. You pull the sheet of paper out, and you have some dates scribbled on it that mean absolutely nothing to them, but you pull that out, and you give them the impression that you're in demand. No matter what, hey, you know, let me check, because you want them to feel like, oh, man, this photographer's in demand. I need to make sure I talk to them. I need to, you know, try to book them before somebody else does, because you know, if they looked at your work and they like what they saw enough to ask you if you're available on the day, then that means they're interested in you. So you definitely want to give them the impression that you're an in-demand photographer, and that's important. You know, we always put the dates down. Before every show, we put all the dates down that we know we're booked on the card, and then we also look at the calendar and say, okay, what other dates do we not want to do weddings? I'll never do a wedding on my kids' birthdays. I want to be at their birthday every single year. So we mark off other dates that we know we're not going to do weddings as well. You know, any holidays that are important to us to not miss, things like that. And we'll always pull that card out every single time. Even if I know for a fact that we are available, I'm going to always pull that out. It's super, super important, and it definitely gives a good impression. Pricing information, this is a big one. To me, I think it's a bad idea to hand out pricing at the show. There's all kinds of information that you can hand out, but at the end of the day, if you hand out all your pricing information, you really haven't given the bride a reason to stay in contact with you. So what we usually do is give a range or a starting point. Our prices start here or range from this to this. Just basically, number one, you definitely want to do that because you want to qualify the bride. If a bride's standing in front of you and their budget is $1,200 and your range starts at $2,000 or $3,000, then you really don't want to waste the postage on sending that person in pricing. So you don't want to gather their information. So it eliminates shoppers, but by giving a range and giving a starting point, it opens the door to gathering information, which is the next big thing. To us, it's so important to walk out with a big stack of paper that has information on how to contact those brides. Most of the shows that we've done in the past have always given us a leads list. The leads list is nice, but a lot of times, you know, most of those brides on there may have already hired a photographer, so you just don't know. But to me, I'm going to use that leads list, but to me, what's even more important is to have a stack of leads that are qualified, interested leads. These are the people that came by, told me they wanted information, they liked my photography, and want to sit down and meet with me. So I want to gather that information. So typically when they come in and they say, what's your price? Are you available? And what's your pricing? You know, we pull out the sheet of paper and say, yes, we are available, and our range is this. And if we gave them our range and discussed a little bit about what that range includes, and they're still interested, we say, you know what, if you like, we're going to be sending out information tomorrow. If you fill out this card, we'll make sure that you have information in your hands right away. So those brides are right off the bat going to take that card and fill out that information. That is a highly qualified lead. That's somebody that's already interested in working with you, and you want that information in your hands. You don't want to have to go hunting for it. You don't want to rely on them to contact you back because, again, at the end of the day, if there's 85 or 100 photographers there, they might forget you 10 minutes after the show because they saw so many photographers. So if you have the ability to reach out to them because they requested information, that's great. The key with this is if you're going to gather their information, be ready to send information immediately. Before every single show, we've got the packages of information we're going to mail out already in envelopes, pre-stamped, ready to go, to where all we have to do is come in after the show the next day and type up mailing address labels to stick on there and send out. So it's going out immediately. But to take it a step further, what we've started doing, part of the information that we gather is actually their email address. So the night of the show, we do something that has proven to be really beneficial. Remember earlier I said to take a photo of your booth? Well, what we'll do is we'll send them an email saying, hey, it was such a pleasure speaking with you. And a lot of times on the sheet of paper, after they fill out the sheet of paper that I've gathered their information on, I'll flip it over, and if there's specific things about them, I mean, the sheet of paper is going to ask where their wedding is, when it is, where the reception is, just some basic information on how to contact them. But through talking through them, I'm gathering information myself, and as soon as they walk away, I'm jotting notes down. So we'll send them an email that night saying, hey, it was great speaking with you. We look forward to having the opportunity of photographing your wedding at this location. It was great getting to know this and this about you. So it shows to them that you paid attention to the things that they said. Then in addition, we attach a photo of our booth. The photo of the booth reminds them of who you are. They see, okay, now I remember who that photographer is. So they don't just get a random email saying, oh, it's an email from another photographer. No, they say, oh, yeah, that's that photographer we really liked that had the giant red wall with this, this, and this, this. That visual reminder of who you are, and then this really detailed message saying, hey, it was great speaking with you. I love the idea of photographing you on a custom BMW motorcycle with your bride, or blah, blah, blah. Anything like that, they're going to say, man, they really paid a lot of attention. They're really interested in our wedding. And it's going to really kick something off in them to get them more interested in your services. That customized attention that you're giving them is so important and crucial and so valuable. And be different. You know, every single photographer that's there is handing out postcards, and most of the photographers are handing out these postcards that are 4 by 5.5 or something like that. And what happens is a bride's walking around with a bag, and at the end of the day, she gets home, and she's got a stack of 104 by 5.5 cards that are all in a pile. We never do the small postcards. We always do the largest postcards we can. So we're usually doing 6 by 8s. Sometimes we'll do 5 by 7s. We print them on different papers. We don't do the cheap ones. We'll do pearl paper or textured paper or linen paper. We do things that feel nicer. We do things that are larger, so when they're doing their stack of 4 by 5.5, this card won't fit in that pile, so they have to pull that one out separate. Well, that's what you want. You want to stand out. You want to be different. We've done bookmarks. The nice thing about the bookmarks is what we'll do is we'll do the 6 by 8 postcards, and we'll lay them out. Basically, we'll do 3 cards, 2 by 8 bookmarks, and then cut them ourselves. So one 6 by 8 card essentially produces 3 2 by 8 bookmarks. Again, it's something that's different, that's shaped different, that looks different. It's two-sided. It's got color images on both sides and information on both sides of the card. It's something that's different, that stands out, that feels different, that looks nicer. Again, if you expect people to spend a lot of money booking your services, then you have to be willing to spend money to show them you're worth it. Giving them DVDs with a slideshow of your images, using Animoto or services like that. We do gifts. So we've actually gone out and got custom lip balm, where we had the little lip balm things with our information and photos on it. And every bride that came by and talked to us, we give them a lip balm. We've done photo magnets for the refrigerators with our logo on it. Anything that you can give. I mean, brides at a bridal show are the equivalent to a kid on Halloween. They're going door to door to fill their bag with as much candy as they possibly can. In fact, in the past, we've actually gone to companies that made bags, and we actually purchased large bags with our logo on it, which is really great, because then you have brides walking around the show, and everybody that sees them carrying this bag with a giant PW Photography logo on it, they're walking around doing our advertising in the show for us. And then you have brides coming by saying, hey, I need a bag. Can I get a bag? Even if they're not interested and they've already booked a photographer, I'll give them a bag, because they're going to walk around the show with my bag showing everybody else, hey, PW Photography. And it's not that expensive. And again, it gets your name out there. So definitely be different. Do the things you need to do to stand out, so that at the end of the day, when they get home to that big bag of booty of that Halloween candy that they've got, they're going to go for their favorite pieces first. All the kids always go for that Snickers bar first, and they go for the little piece of candy that nobody really wants last, and because they got a bag full of those, but they want that big piece of chocolate first. So I want to be that big piece of chocolate in their trick-or-treat bag. The other thing is look important. You know, dressing appropriately, again, I talked about this earlier, it's just so important. You know, if the parents are with them and they're looking at spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, whatever, $10,000, they're looking to spend that much money with you, and you're standing there in jeans and a T-shirt, and you want to look cool and hip to the bride, but the bride's not the one that's paying the check. Looking professional is really, really important. Let your photography be the trendy part. Let that be the part that makes you look cool and trendy. But you should look professional. I just can't emphasize that anymore. I mean, it's at the end of the day, if the bride walks by and she thinks I'm the coolest looking guy because I've got the neat pants on and I got this really cool graphic shirt on, and man, that photographer's so cool. But if mom and dad are the ones that are paying and they say, yeah, you know, I'm not going to hire somebody and pay them $10,000 to photograph a wedding if they can't, you know, dress a little bit nicer, then I just missed out. But if a bride walks by and I'm just dressed in a nice suit, that, you know, it doesn't say, hey, man, he dresses really cool, but it doesn't say that I'm a bum or anything either. It doesn't say anything. It says that I'm professional. But then when they look at our work and say, wow, their work is really awesome, they stand out, they're really different, look at the stuff they're giving us, really neat postcards, and the display, this is a really slick-looking photographer, then at the end of the day, you looked important, you stood out, and you look like somebody that they should be talking to. So last but not least, you know, this is really important. Clear your calendar. We never, ever book appointments for the week after a bridal show, because the last thing I want to do is go to a bridal show on a Sunday and then not be able to meet with brides immediately and have portrait sessions or whatever filling my calendar. So we always try to get any portrait sessions or anything that people want to schedule done either before or a week after the bridal show. The immediate week following the bridal show, we want to be able to meet with brides immediately. In fact, we'll take our calendar with us to the bridal show, and we will schedule appointments for the following calendar week right then and there at the show, and then we'll do follow-ups also via people that return our email. And that's the importance of doing that email. If you gather their information and then you mail out your pricing to them, you have to wait for them to receive the pricing and then call you back. Whereas if you send them an email, again, thanking them for coming, showing them the photo, doing a few things, then they can respond to the email right away saying, hey, we'd love to come in and meet with you this week. Leave your calendar open so that people can come and meet with you. It's so important. So that's kind of the end of it. I did want to mention one thing. We have a product called PW Elements, and this is kind of accumulation of great stuff that we've done throughout the years. One thing is the Bridal Show in the Box, which is what we just talked about. It's I think it's either a 7 or 9 page PDF of all the things I just talked about and so much more. It's years and years and years of information that's important in going to bridal shows. It's also a couple of different checklists of things that you need to have when you're going to the bridal show, things to remember to take, things to remember to do to prepare for the show. It also has the information sheet that we get brides to fill out and a template that you can drop your own logo on and print out. The next thing is PW Business. It has all of our contracts, the wedding contract, all of our workflow forms, every kind of form, letter, contract, anything that our business does, model releases, any type of business form that you would think is important is in this. Then our actions, it's our 29 favorite actions that we use. Also our birth card templates, birth announcement card templates, and our card templates for seniors, Christmas cards and things like that. I think there's about 60 templates in there. Our border set that has the different grunge effects and things like that, different torn edge effects, and then PW Design, which is the grunges, flourishes, rubber stamps, lightning. You can add eyelashes to people, all kinds of stuff. There's literally tons and tons and tons of great stuff for your business, and you get it all for $100. So if you guys are interested in any of that, email us. At the bottom you see my wife's email address, Lillian@PW Photography, or our phone number. Feel free to call us, 804-560-8800. We're glad to give you more information about this stuff. These are all things that we use day to day in our business that have become essential to us running our studio. So if you guys are interested, and I know a few of you had contacted us after my previous show about the posing guide for maternity sessions, the flip chart posing guides, and we had run out, but we are fully stocked on those now. So if you guys are interested in the flip chart posing guide for our maternity sessions, we have those in as well. So thank you guys. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you right now. And thank you, collages.net, for hosting me. Again, can't thank them so much. It seems like they're doing so much for our industry right now.
All right, thanks a lot, Pete. So we have a lot of great questions, but what I want to do is I do want to talk about one thing that we have recently just launched before we get into Q&A. Basically, what we've done is we actually just released new die-cut press-printed card templates. So if you are interested in checking those out, you can go to collages.net/rose and download Collages Color. But we have 5 new press-printed die-cut cards available in Rose and several free drag-and-drop templates that you can use. Or if you have your own designs, you are more than welcome to and strongly encouraged to import them as well. But you can check them out in Rose. And we're offering multiple shapes and orientations in the 5x5, 5x7, and we'll soon be adding 2 more, including for the 3x3. But what I want to do now, I just want to get that in before we got into the Q&A session. So Pete, one of the questions that I'm getting here is what's reasonable in terms of cost for your booths?
You know, it's going to vary from state to state and from city to city. You know, it's the cost of our 10x20 booth, I think, is normally $1,500 per show. But a lot of shows will do a thing where if you pre-commit to doing 2 shows, they'll knock off like $100 or 10% or something like that. I think ultimately because we pre-commit to 2 shows in advance per show every single time, I think it goes down from $1,500 to $1,295 or something like that. Then we add in electricity, which is another $50 or $75. But that's for a 10x20. I've got a friend in South Carolina, I think for the same size space, he might pay $800 or something like that. So it can vary literally from state to state or city to city, depending on where you are. You know, honestly, what we always say is, I'm willing to pay any amount for a show if I know that I can book enough for that show to pay for itself. So, for example, if I were to go out and pay $1,400 for a show, and I book 1 wedding and break even, and ultimately, after all the fees and everything came out, I made $1,400, so I broke even by booking that. It's worth it to me because even though we may not have booked 4 or 5 weddings out of it, the visibility we got of, okay, what just happened was we did Marketing 101. We were seen by 2,000 brides, and not all of them are going to be booking their photographers today. We've literally done shows where we had a bride book us, and we said, well, how did you find us? Oh, I saw you at the bridal show. Well, which one? Oh, it was the one 2.5, 3 years ago. So a lot of times you'll do a show and you may not get anything out of it, but at the end of the day, it's the visibility of the people that saw you that might book you later on, or that may book you for an engagement session or a bridal portrait session, even though they've already got their wedding photographer. Maybe they want you for a different type of session. But to put a price that is reasonable on it, it's really hard to say. I mean, it's more what you're willing to spend and more what you're willing to budget. And you know, I always say go for the biggest space you can afford with the best location, because you're going to get the most out of it. I've always said you got to spend money to make it.
Exactly. So, when you're at the trade shows, do you ever offer an incentive for them to book at the trade show?
We will not take bookings at a trade show. We have never ever booked a wedding at the trade show, and we've had people offer to write us a check right then and there on the spot, and we've never lost a wedding as a result of it. But to me, and every photographer is going to vary on this, but the reality is, to me, booking a wedding is as much about you wanting to do that person's wedding as them wanting you to photograph it. and some photographers may say it's a luxury to turn a wedding down, but you get a gut feeling from a person when you spend enough time talking to them to know whether or not it's going to be kind of what we would consider a bridezilla or a nightmare bride. Well, you can't get that gut feeling in a 2 or 3 minute discussion at a bridal show. So, and we tell every single bride there, when we have brides say, can I book you right now because I don't want to lose you? We say, if your date's available, it'll still be available tomorrow and the next day because we will not take bookings today. I won't take a deposit today. So if you're really that interested in booking me, let's go ahead and get you on the calendar for first thing tomorrow. We can sit down and discuss your wedding and go through some details because I really feel like it's just as important for all of us to get to know each other and to make sure that there are no questions left unanswered. Because the last thing you also want to do is take somebody's check and they booked you for their photography, and then afterwards they go through and they're looking at your contract and they're looking at the stuff and they're realizing, man, this really isn't a good fit. And then what you've done by taking that booking is now every other bride that can, especially if it happens first thing in the morning, if somebody comes to you at 11 a.m. and they say, I want to book you for this date, I want to take it, well, then you spent the rest of the day telling all the other brides that were on that day, saying, oh, no, somebody just booked it, it's unavailable. And you might have turned away 100 brides that would have booked you because you took this check, and now that person realizes, oh, you know what, you're not a good fit, I'm not interested, and you just turn that date away. So we will not book weddings on the day of the show for that reason.
Okay, thank you. And can you provide some tips or info on how to find bridal shows and maybe which ones you might skip out on? And if you have I know you did touch on this a little bit in the beginning, but if you could just kind of reiterate exactly what you're looking for if you do find a new location or a new trade show in the area that you want to go to, or a new bridal show.
The first thing I would say is the best way to find shows is to look where brides would look for shows. You can do a Google search for Richmond area bridal shows, and then all the area bridal shows that are happening are going to pop up. You can go pick up the local newsstand magazines and the Knot and all these other places. Most bridal shows are advertising on the Knot and other websites and places like that about their shows, so you can usually find a full calendar. But when we're going through and picking the shows that we're going to do, the things that are important to us are picking shows that are doing a lot to get brides in. So the shows we do heavy, heavy, heavy advertising. They're advertising on the radio. They're advertising on TV. They've got advertisements in the newspaper. They're doing heavy advertising and heavy marketing to get lots of brides in. The shows we avoid are usually the smaller ones that do nothing on the radio, do nothing on TV, and rely on social networks and things like that to get brides in. I mean, honestly, if I'm going to pay you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to be in your show, and you're going to pocket every dime of that and not take any of my money to invest in making sure that I have an audience, then it's not worth it. And I've literally seen shows where the photographers paid thousands of dollars to be there, there was no advertising for it, and 40 or 50 brides showed up. And that's not what you want. So when you find a show and you're considering, going, always say, can you send me a packet of information about the show? I'd like to see what you've got. And can you also tell me the advertising you do? What are you doing to bring brides in? How many shows have you done? And can you give me a history of the number of brides that typically come to your show? That type of information is kind of critical in terms of selecting the show that you choose. We've done a handful of small ones. They're nice in terms of visibility. If they're cheap and we have the time off, then I'll do it. But a lot of times, if it's 40 or 50 brides coming through and, it's not real cost effective, I'd really honestly rather spend the day with my kids and then take a day away from my family to go do a small show. We look for the big bang with a lot of brides. And, again, we realize that not every bride there is going to be our target bride, but at the end of the day, it's more likely that I'm going to see my target bride out of 2,000 brides than 50.
All right, awesome. And kind of piggybacking off that question, as far as size goes, the number of brides that are going to be attending, is location ever is that ever a deciding factor? Like if a trade show is about 2-3 hours away, if it was large enough, would you go to it, or would you try to keep things in your area?
We've considered it because where we are, we're kind of surrounded by a lot of major metropolitan shows. D.C., Baltimore, Virginia Beach, they all have some pretty big shows. If we didn't feel like we were getting good enough results at our show, then I would certainly consider traveling to other shows. A lot of times, the shows that you do, like the show one of the big show we do actually travels all over the country, and they do shows up and down the East Coast, and then they do another really big one out in Houston. So, a lot of times you could talk to the show organizer and say, what other shows do you have? And maybe they'll even give you a deal. I don't know that that's the case, but maybe they'll give you a deal if you commit to not only doing the shows in your area, but you do the shows in the other area as well. If you're looking at expanding into that market and you're willing to travel and do weddings in that area, then definitely, because if I'm in Richmond and I'm trying to reach DC brides because I want to get into that DC market, which tends to yield a little bit larger budget, then I'm not going to see DC brides here, and doing a show up there would be worth it. But in our case, we're pretty content with the number of weddings that we get here, and we get enough weddings from those other areas that we tend not to do a lot of shows in other markets. But I wouldn't discourage it. I mean, if it's a market you want to tap into and you feel like it's going to be beneficial for you, just do the homework on the show first.
Okay, excellent. The last question that I want to ask you so that everyone can hear is, based on your history, how much return on investment are bridal shows producing for the studio?
$1 million. We've done shows now for, I guess, 7 or 8 years, and we've done a minimum of 2 shows a year. We've had years where we did a show and didn't get a single wedding out of it, but it wasn't because it wasn't a good show. It was because we literally went in and our calendar for that year was completely full. So, for example, we go to the January 2008 show, and the entire calendar year for us for 2008 was already booked. So we weren't going to the January 2008 show looking for 2008 weddings. We were going, number one, just for visibility so people didn't forget we existed, and then number two, for the potential of the people that were looking for 2009 weddings. The wedding industry is kind of fickle in that, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this, but if you don't do a bridal show and you decide to miss a bridal show, all of a sudden speculation amongst vendors is, oh, they must not be doing weddings anymore. And even if it's totally not true, you just aren't doing the show because you're fully booked and your schedule is, you're having the best year ever. You need that visibility not only with brides but with other vendors. Think of it as, if you're paying $1,200 for a booth, think of it as you just paid a $1,200 networking ticket. You pay $1,200 to make sure that every other vendor in there, the florists, the caterers, the wedding planners, the DJs, they all know you're still around and you're still a part of the game. Because as soon as you miss one, the wedding vendors have a very short memory, and they're going to talk about, refer, and be fans of the ones that they most recently saw. So to us, doing the bridal show is as important to seeing other vendors as it is to seeing brides, because the referral is so big. For a good bridal show, we just did one in August, and I think we booked 5 weddings from it. So, and I would say the average from those so far has been about $4,500 per wedding. So you figure we spent $1,500 on it, and I think it's 5 weddings at $4,500 each. You can do the math. I mean, it yielded pretty good for us. And that's the August show, which is actually notoriously the slowest show. And we were pretty pleased with that. I mean, if we had done the August show and booked 2 weddings, I'd have been ecstatic. So booking 5 was like, wow, that's fantastic. The January show is usually the bigger show for us. And I think it's that way kind of all over the country. The shows that hit around Christmas are always bigger because brides get Christmas money, or their parents say, you know, for part of your present, we're going to pay for the wedding, or cover this or cover that. And also, right around Christmas is the highest time, other than Valentine's Day, the largest number of engagements happen over the Christmas holidays. So many guys propose during Christmas, and you get these brides that are just fresh off of being proposed to. Let's go start planning the wedding. The summer bridal shows, which are great, but the reality is guys don't do a lot of proposing during the summer. They're thinking about getting their tan, going out in the convertible, going out on vacation. So it just, you know, the bridal shows happen then because it's kind of right in the thick of wedding season and weddings are happening. So you do have those brides that are saying, hey, I just went to my friend's wedding. I'm in bridal planning mode because I'm seeing this stuff. Those aren't necessarily during the summer shows brides that are freshly engaged. Those are brides that are in the thick of planning, but you're not going to see as many. So that winter show is so important. I would expect we'll probably, from the January show, we would probably see 6 to 8 bookings from that one. So in terms of revenue, it's pretty nice. I mean, still the bulk of our weddings come from referrals, but bridal shows have been pretty generous to us.
Okay,
Long
excellent.
answer to your question, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's all great information. I know everyone's really excited to hear.